It was around 3 p.m. on Saturday, July 11th, 1970, when a fisherman along the Yellowstone River in Montana made a discovery. Little did he not think that the day would haunt him forever. Instead of catching a fish, he pulled up something far more terrifying. It was a human body. Panicked and in shock, the fisherman rushed to the nearest ranch, found a phone and called the police, desperate to report what he had found. Hey everyone. Welcome to the Whispered Mystery Channel. Deputy Bigelow, who was stationed near Yellowstone National Park, quickly responded. With help from some locals, he bravely waded into the rough waters to pull the body to shore. But this wasn't just a simple drowning. As soon as Deputy Bigelow saw the body, he knew something was terribly wrong. The head was missing. This was no accident. It was murder. What started as a peaceful day of fishing had turned into a nightmare that would shake the small, quiet community in Montana. Sheriff Don Gattoni and Coroner Davis were called to the scene. The three men stood around the body, which was only wearing a pair of shorts. They could tell it was a young man. But the condition of the body was worse than anything they had ever seen. Not only was the head missing, but the arms were cut off at the shoulders. The legs were chopped off at the knees. The chest and abdomen were covered in stab wounds, and there was a huge gaping hole in the chest. As Coroner Davis examined the body, he looked clearly shaken. "I've never seen anything like this," he said grimly. "This poor guy was stabbed about 25 times, and I'd guess he's been in the water for about a day." He was young, probably in his early 20s, but there was something even more disturbing. "There's one other thing," he added. "The heart is missing." The killer had cut open the chest and taken out the heart. Why was this poor guy tortured so very badly? For Sheriff Gattoni, this was a major challenge. The head and hands, which were crucial for identifying the victim, had been deliberately removed. But why was the body so brutally mutilated? Why cut off the legs? Why take the heart? All these questions shrouded the detective's mind, and he stood confused. Who could have wanted this man so very badly tortured and killed? It seemed like more than just a murder. It hinted at something ritualistic or cult-like. Back then, there had been similar cases across the U.S., all linked to secretive devil-worshipping groups. The infamous Sharon Tate case had grabbed headlines, but bizarre killings were happening nationwide. The torso was taken to the morgue in Livingston for a full autopsy, while the police sent out descriptions of the victim to nearby states, hoping for a lead. Since the Yellowstone River flows from Wyoming into Montana, it was impossible to determine exactly where the body had been dumped. Despite extensive searches along the riverbanks, no traces of the missing limbs were found. The autopsy results were grim. The victim had been stabbed 27 times with a sharp blade, at least 5 inches long. The removal of the head and limbs was crudely done, possibly with the same knife used in the stabbing. The victim was in his early 20s and had been dead for about 24 hours before being found. With no way to identify him, the police could only wait for someone to report a missing person. On Monday morning, a teletype message arrived at the sheriff's office in Livingston. It described a missing person who matched the torso's description. James Michael Schlosser, a 22-year-old social worker from the town of Roundup, about 100 miles away. Schlosser had been reported missing that morning. Schlosser had set out on Friday, planning to drive to Yellowstone Park in his yellow Opel Kadett sports car. But he hadn't shown up for work on Monday, and when his co-workers checked with his landlady, they found out he hadn't returned home. Schlosser was described as being 6 feet tall, around 200 pounds, matching the height and build of the torso. Sheriff Gattoni immediately put out an alert for Schlosser's car. A yellow 1969 Opel Kadett with black racing stripes, hoping it would provide the key to solving this gruesome mystery. But then, things took a wild turn when that very car was involved in a collision over 1,000 miles away in California. The crash happened on a dirt road in Monterey County, California, not far from the Pacific Ocean. The Opel Kadett, the same car James Schlosser had been driving, was speeding on the wrong side of the road when it slammed into a pickup truck. The truck suffered only minor damage, but the car was completely wrecked. The driver of the truck, a businessman on vacation from Detroit, got out to check on the other vehicle. Out of the wrecked car crawled 2 young men, both with the unmistakable look of California hippies, long hair, beards, and a carefree vibe. One was tall, blonde, and powerfully built, while the other had dark hair and wore a green army jacket. Despite the situation, they were surprisingly friendly. The businessman asked to exchange driver's licenses, but neither of the young men had one. He took note of the car's registration number, Schlosser's car. He then offered to drive them to the nearest phone so they could report the accident to the police. The 2 men agreed and climbed into his truck. But when they reached a service station in the town of Lucia, things took another strange turn. Both men suddenly bolted from the truck and disappeared into the nearby woods. The truck driver immediately called the police and reported the incident, giving them the registration number of the car. The California Highway Patrol was alerted, and a description of the 2 men was broadcast. They were now wanted in connection with a possible homicide. Patrolman Randy Newton was out cruising the Pacific Coast Highway when he got the call. He figured the suspects couldn't have gotten far, so he turned onto a dirt road hoping to catch them. And just 2 miles outside of Lucia, he spotted them walking along the road trying to hitch a ride. When Newton stopped and questioned the 2 men, they didn't have any identification but quickly admitted they were the ones involved in the car accident. Without hesitation, Patrolman Newton arrested both of them and called for backup. The men were handcuffed and read their rights, but what happened next would shock even the most seasoned officers. The blonde man, eager to talk, identified himself as Stanley Dean Baker, 23 years old, and his companion as Harry Allen Stroop, 20. Baker was from Sheridan, Wyoming, and said he and Stroop had been traveling together since early June, hitching rides wherever they could. But what he revealed next was downright disturbing. During a search of the suspects, Officer Newton found small lengths of bone in Baker's pockets. When asked about them, Baker casually replied, "They ain't chicken bones. They're human fingers." Then, without a hint of emotion, he added, "I have a problem. I'm a cannibal." Baker and Stroop were taken to the police station in Monterey, where Detective Dempsey Biley began questioning them. Baker, who seemed almost proud of his actions, confessed to killing James Schlosser. He claimed that Stroop wasn't involved in the murder but had simply joined him afterward. But what Baker confessed later shook not only the detectives but everyone who was in that room. During interrogation, Baker confessed to the crime without any hesitation, in fact without a simple remorse. He went on to describe the events proudly. He detailed how he met Schlosser near Big Timber, Montana, and hitched a ride with him. Baker and Schlosser had set camp near the Yellowstone River. The victim wasn't aware what lies ahead for him. Little did Schlosser think that was his last night ever. In the middle of the night, Baker cruelly shot Schlosser twice in the head with a .22 pistol he always carried. But the horror didn't end there. Baker then dismembered the body. He then cut the head, arms, and legs. But most importantly, when questioned about the heart, Baker simply said, "I ate it, raw." He explained that he had cut off Schlosser's fingers to have something to chew on and dumped the rest of the body in the river, along with the murder weapon. Later, he reunited with Stroop and offered him a ride in Schlosser's car. During the investigation, Baker insisted that Stroop had nothing to do with the killing. Among Baker's belongings, police found a recipe for LSD and, most importantly, a paperback book titled The Satanic Bible, a guidebook for devil worship, complete with instructions for conducting a black mass. Baker's story was chilling, but it didn't end there. He described the exact location of the camp where he had murdered Schlosser, and when police searched the area, they found undeniable evidence of the crime. The ground was soaked with dried blood, a blood-stained hunting knife was discovered, and among the debris were bone fragments, teeth, skin, and a severed human ear. Both men were quickly taken before a judge in California and waived extradition. Soon after, they were flown back to Montana, where they faced charges in front of a district judge. On July 27th, Baker was remanded to Park County Jail. But by August 4th, the judge ordered him to undergo a psychiatric evaluation at Warm Springs State Hospital. Meanwhile, Stroop remained mostly silent, seemingly guilty of nothing more than befriending a homicidal maniac and devil worshiper. The small bones found in Baker's pockets were sent to a pathologist, who confirmed that they were from a human right index finger. As for the motive behind this gruesome crime, the prosecution argued it was simply Baker's lust for human flesh. But there might be more to the story. If you found our content insightful, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a second to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you'll be the first to know when we upload new videos. And don't forget to click the notification bell next to it. That way you won't miss out on any of the suspenseful content we have coming up. Some experts believe that cannibalism can symbolize total domination over a victim, an ultimate act of power and contempt. Maybe Baker, a drifter and social outcast, saw Schlosser, a successful and respectable young man, as a symbol of everything he could never be, a target for his rage and envy. Whatever the true motive, this horrifying case remains one of the most disturbing crimes in Montana's history. If you have theories, insights, or cases you want us to cover, drop a comment below. We love hearing from you. Remember, the truth is out there, and sometimes it's closer than you think. Stay safe, and until next time, keep your eyes open and your mind sharp. See you in the next investigation.